Hi, I'm Greg. I'm back with my client Jennifer. Today we're going to be walking through 3 upper extremity movement exercises, focusing on the overhead press, or the press, the bench press, and the bent over row. We're going to modify it because Jennifer, our client, is a beginner and deconditioned client, and we're going to work through some modifications that we would normally address in an atypical workout setting. We're going to start with the overhead press. I'm going to demonstrate and walk through the movement, and then we'll have Jennifer complete it. So to start off the overhead press, we're going to take a look at the grip. We're going to be using a pronated closed grip, which means we're going to go overhand on the bar. Our wrists are going to be just slightly a little bit wider than shoulder width. The bar is going to rest kind of right over the shoulders. Wrists are going to be directly underneath the bar, and elbows are going to be directly in front of the bar. As we drive this bar up, we want to make sure that there's no movement horizontally. So to account for that, we're going to be moving our body in relation to the bar as we push it through. So as the bar drives up, the torso is going to drive out. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, the neck is slightly extended and the upper body is slightly extended. And then as we drive the bar up, our body is going to come forward and our torso is going to drive forward. So what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to drive the bar straight up vertically, decreasing the movement and basically increasing efficiency within the movement. The knees should be locked out, and the hips, there should be like really minimal movement within the hips. I think that's just about it. Through with the movement, or the full concentric phase of the movement, is right above the shoulders and then all the way press the top of the head, the lockout, and then the eccentric is all the way down. The eyes are going to stay looking forward the entire movement, and that's the full press. And now we're going to have Jennifer demonstrate it. So now we're going to have Jennifer demonstrate the overhead press with very minimal resistance. All we have here is a wooden dowel, just to take a look at her movement because she is a beginner at this exercise. We want to make sure that we can spot anything major before we actually give her some load. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this again with the external load that's going to be a little bit heavier than this, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hand this off to Jennifer. She's going to go ahead and grab on and let me know when she's ready to hand it off. Yeah? Okay, so now she's got it. Hands are actually going to come a little bit wider. A little bit wider. Perfect. The bar is going to rest right over Jennifer's shoulders, and her elbows are going to come out off of her body interiorly. So before we complete this movement, as you drive up, I want you to breathe out, and as the eccentric movement, which is going to be slowly as well, I want her to take a big deep breath in, essentially, because throughout her movement and throughout any repetitions that we do, especially with load, any greater than this, we want to make sure that the breathing is solid and it relates to the movement completely. So go ahead, Jennifer, whenever you're ready, the movement. Go ahead and give me one more. Perfect. And so just something that I'm noticing here, we just want to make sure that Jennifer's elbow stays right under the bar. This is going to seem kind of weird because this isn't too heavy just yet, but when we give her that external load that's a little bit more than this, we want to make sure that her elbow is directly underneath her wrist and that the bar is directly over her elbow. About 10 kilograms here, and I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Jennifer. She's going to let me know when she's ready to take it from me fully. So whenever you're ready. So a little bit wider than shoulder width. Good. Right there. Perfect. So now what I'm looking at is I want to make sure elbows are going to come slightly forward and wrists are going to come slightly. I want you to over-pronate just a little bit. Perfect. And so that's a really good starting position. Her knees are going to lock out. All I want you to do is raise that bar vertically as you exhale. And down slowly. One more. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so now our second movement or our second exercise is the chest press. We're not at a typical gym setting, so we're going to be using kind of a modified station. I'm going to be her spotter throughout this entire exercise as I would for any client of mine. So first, I'm going to walk through key things. So we're going to be using, again, an overhand or a pronated closed grip for this chest press. Our hands are going to be slightly wider than shoulder width. We want to remain in 5-point contact throughout this entire movement, which means that our head, our upper back, our lower back, and both of our feet are in contact with something. So head, upper back, and lower back are going to be in contact with the step or our bench here, and then feet are going to remain on the floor. Two things, as we're in that locked out position, our hands or the bar in unison are going to remain directly over the GH joint or the glenohumeral joint. And as we lower the bar, it's going to kind of lower to our sternum. And what this is going to do is it's going to prevent any kind of shoulder impingement. If we just lowered straight through the movement, it's going to create basically, or we're going to risk shoulder impingement. And as we lower it, it's going to protect our shoulder joint. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that now. And our breathing is the same as the overhead press. The eccentric movement, it's a breathe, or it's an inhale, and then the concentric is an exhale. A little bit wider than shoulder width, close grip. As I come back, it comes up, lower down right to the sternum, and then push up. So two things that I want to just touch upon really quickly. Throughout the entire movement, we want to make sure that we're not arching the back or we're not raising the chest to meet the bar. What this does is it creates injuries, especially in the core or the lower back. And we don't want to be moving around our neck through this, so our eyes are basically going to be usually right at the ceiling in a typical gym setting, or right above the bar in this setting. Okay, so now I just want to get this really quickly from a lateral point of view, just to point out what I'm talking about when I'm talking about when the arms are locked out in the locked out position or at the very top of the movement. They're right over the GH joint, and then as we lower, it comes to the sternum to protect that shoulder. So it's up, and then as we lower, it comes to the sternum. Okay, so we're going to get this again from the lateral angle, the lateral shot. So Jennifer, whenever you're ready, grab onto it. Before you start your repetitions, just one thing to point out. What I was talking about again, protecting the shoulder. Right now, because we have this shot from the lateral view, we want to make sure that her lower back kind of stays touching the step, and that her chest doesn't come to raise to meet the bar. We're also looking at, we want to make sure that as this eccentric movement kind of happens, we want to make sure that the bar is coming closer to our sternum, just a little bit to protect the shoulder. So whenever you're ready, Jennifer. One more time, just a little bit slower. Perfect. Let me grab that from you. Perfect. We're good. So we're going to take a look at Jennifer's chest press again. I'm going to spot her and make sure that nothing major she's doing is going to cause injury. This time we're using a 10-kilogram bar, a nice weighted bar that should give us enough resistance to see any kind of inefficient movement. Jennifer, you let me know when you're ready. Perfect, so I'm going to release, slowly lower as you inhale, press as you exhale. Perfect, one more. Good, I'm going to go ahead and grab that now. Perfect, and we're good with that shot. Again, the chest press, weighted, loaded with external resistance. Jennifer is just going to complete like 2 or 3 repetitions. Jennifer, whenever you're ready. Let's see it again. Good, it looks good. Keep your eyes. Give me this for 2 seconds. When you're looking, I just want to make sure that you're not looking that way, that you're actually looking right above the bar to protect this neck. We want to make sure that as she's pressing, she's not flexing the neck. It's just remaining in a nice neutral position, protecting the neck and the spine. So just one more time, let's try that again. Good, that was good. Perfect. So our third exercise we're going to be walking through is the bent over row. Just like Jennifer's deadlift, we're going to approach it the same way. So I have it set up a very similar way, just a little bit higher than her deadlift position. Stance is going to be very similar to the deadlift. She's going to step up midsole or midfoot is going to be right in line with the bar. Hips are going to be right where our feet are. Our feet are going to be around hip, in between hip and shoulder width. Toes slightly pointed outwards. So our back is what is going to be really crucial during this to prevent injury, especially for Jennifer or any deconditioned or beginning client, because their core section might not be as strong as we want it to, or maybe they're building their core. So we are really going to be taking a look at protecting the back, especially the lower back. So back and spine are going to remain in a neutral, rigid position, even as we come over to grab onto the bar or to assume our grip. So it's going to come up with us. We're going to start all these repetitions with the bar dangling, and instead of Jennifer focusing on bringing the bar into her chest, we really want to focus on her driving the elbows up and back behind the body. So it's going to look like this. And then lower again. So as you notice, breathing, same thing. As we lower it, it's an inhale. As we bring it into our body, it's an exhale, or as we row, it's an exhale for the concentric movement. The last thing that I just want to point out is that this bar, it's not going to be driven right into our hips, it's not going to be driven into our chest, it's going to hit right at the top of the abdominal muscles. And remember that we're pulling with our elbows back behind our body. So
Action.
All right, so we're gonna get this shot one more time from the lateral view. I'm gonna be looking at her interior view. Jennifer, whenever you're ready, approach this. All we need is about 2 repetitions. Good, hips back. Perfect, eyes are right in front. Good, right up to the body. You notice her elbows are tucked right up against the body, and that's good. Perfect. And we're gonna go home and perform this again with loaded resistance this time.
Action.
Okay, so this time Jennifer's going to be performing the bent over row. We have a 10-kilogram bar right here. We're really kind of going to be overcritical this time in protecting her lower back. I want to make sure that that the movement looks correct from the anterior and the lateral view before she starts to do a high number of repetitions of this movement. So when you're ready, good, hips back. And then just driving the elbows right back. Perfect. Bar's gonna come up right to higher abs. Perfect. Last thing we're gonna have Jennifer do is run through this one more time from a lateral view, which might give us a better look at what's going on with angles, as well as her center of gravity, as well as the pull through the movement to see that, or to make sure that we're protecting her lower back, to make sure her hips and her knees and her center of gravity isn't coming forward, that it's remaining grounded, and to make sure that her spine all the way through is staying nice and centered, and that there's no flexion or extension that may lead to injury. Jennifer, whenever you're ready, just like 2 repetitions, that's all we need. Good. Go ahead and slowly drop. So the only modifications that I would probably make to this is as she adds a little bit more resistance, I would say just focusing on the eccentric movement just as much as the concentric. So as she's lowering that bar down, really focusing on keeping her elbows tight, really focusing on the vertical linear movement of this exercise, and that's it.